Hello YouTube, this is Darkon633. We're taking a look at the Transformers Combiner Wars Victorion box set. Now, for those who aren't aware, last year Hasbro held a promotion that had to deal with the fan-built character. It started as far back as the standard rebrand of Generations when they started with the IDW comics. And that is where Windblade came to be. For Combiner Wars, though, it was to build a female combiner. Now, obviously, this character does not exist prior to Combiner Wars, and it's really nice that we actually got a completely new design combiner in the toy line, so it's really cool to see that. Anyways, we'll take a look at the box. Since it is a box set, while it isn't the same size as the Devastator box set, it is still pretty big. What's cool is that, unlike Devastator, it actually includes something extra, which we'll get to in a minute. It shows that it's consisted of 6 members, this time of a legend, so don't expect to see another deluxe combined with it. On the back, it shows the full look of Victorion, along with the components that make it up. We have Pyra Magna, which is the leader. We have Dust Up, Jumpstream, Skyburst, Stormclash, and Rust Dust. So there's some pretty interesting names for these combiners. Now, similar to the other releases of the Combiner Wars toys, we have the card as normal, which is just the standard, pretty nice looking of the art. It looks like they just shrunk down the art on the box once again and just put it as a card. However, this actually includes one extra really nice thing, actually. As you can see, it comes with this brown envelope, but inside the envelope is actually a really nice poster for Combiner Wars Victorion. Now, unfortunately, just the way that Hasbro, for some reason of mine, stored it, there's a really huge dent on one of the corners. I'm trying to remember which one it's. Oh, yeah, here. It's hard to see on camera. But as you can see, it is unfortunate that mine got a pretty bad dent on the side there. So, other than that, it's still a really nice poster, and I wonder if I can actually find a place to actually hang it up. It's actually a really nice touch that they added to this release. Anyways, we'll now look at the individual components of Victorion. And here's the entire team of Victorion out of the box. Now, similar to other combiners, the team consists of 4 Deluxes, 1 Voyager, and 1 Legends class figure. And unlike some of the other combiners, there is 0 new molds in this entire set of Victorion. Now, there's obviously heavy retools on the parts, but no individual brand new molds for any of the characters. So, I've actually reviewed every single character mold already on my channel, so we're going to skip ahead to the transformation and just look at the individual components in both their modes and so on and so forth. Anyways, we'll start with one of the Deluxes. First, we're going to look at Nightbird, I mean Dust Up. Now, a lot of fans have already made the joke that the head design for Dust Up is very similar to what you see for Nightbird from the original G1 cartoon. So it's pretty nice nod, and it's cool to at least have a head that kind of represents the character. Now, what's also cool is that the colors, while it looks really weird, I think they look really nice together when combined, actually. Some of the initial photos kind of made it look like it was kind of weird looking. They're kind of going back and forth between different shades of color, but I think it turned out really nicely. Now, what's cool, though, is that even though the toy itself is pretty much the same, each of the components actually come with a brand new weapon, and they actually have a double ability actually with the actual weapons, which we'll get to a little later. Articulation wide for Dust Up, her head is on a ball joint, so you can turn around and can look up just a tad bit, but a lot more than some other Transformers. Her shoulders are on ball joints, so it has a good range of movement. Swivels in the arms, a single joint in the elbow, and kind of pivot in the hands, but once again, due to transformation, that's pretty much there. You got full waist articulation, ball-jointed hips, swivels in the thighs, pretty good knee bend, and that's it. It doesn't have any swivels or anything in the feet or anything else. Anyways, we're going to quickly go to her vehicle mode, since I've already reviewed the original mold. And this character, Dust Up, was actually using the dead end mold. So anyways, we'll take a look at her vehicle mode. Now Dust Up, once again, is still utilizing the dead end mold, so the vehicle mode is nothing different that you'll see with dead end. However, I guess it does look really nice. The colors are still very weird on the individual components, but I still think they'll work a lot better in their combined mode. On the side, we see an Autobot logo and some kind of Cybertronian language etched onto the side of her vehicle mode, but I don't really know exactly what those are, actually. The weapon can actually be stored on the top, which kind of gives her an extra kind of spoiler look, but it's kind of a weird placement. I don't think many cars or cars in general really have this kind of weird attachment, at least up here. It's usually in the back or maybe the sides or something, just not really on the top like this. But that pretty much covers Dust Up. And now we're taking a look at Jumpstream. Similar to what we've seen with Dust Up, Jumpstream is once again using another component of Menasor, since it's actually utilizing the breakdown mold. Now, the legs still have the same problem that I've seen with the previous breakdown molds, but for some reason, for Jumpstream, it's not as annoying, at least in mine. Anyways, the head kind of reminds me of a weird mix between RC and Windblade. It's a weird looking head, and it's actually pretty nice looking. She also includes this really nice little claw shield weapon or some kind of blaster. I don't really know what this individual blaster is or something, but it is still a really cool weapon nevertheless. Articulation-wise, her head is on a ball joint, and it can kind of move just a bit, but not by a whole lot. Her shoulders are ball jointed, not full movement. No swivels anywhere else, but it does have a ball joint in the elbow and a single jointed elbow which bends all the way there due to transformation. Waist articulation, and once again it utilizes the weird waist ball joint where this is a real problem with the breakdown mold that's just absolutely obnoxious, but it's not as bad with her, and since it's not that loose, and that's really nice. Swivels in the thighs, bends in the knees, but due to the way that it's designed it is a bit strange still. And the feet can pivot a bit, but as you can see there, for some reason of mine, this spoiler piece likes to pop off quite a bit, and it's really annoying. But other than that, that pretty much covers Jumpstream in her robot mode. Now we'll look at her vehicle mode. Now we move on to Jumpstream's vehicle mode. Now it still maintains the same boxy nature of the breakdown mold, but it's pretty cool, I guess. Unlike the other characters, there isn't a whole lot of color variation, since for once, this one is mostly green in its vehicle mode. A lot of the other characters that I've seen have an okay mix of red and this color green, but for this particular character, it's mostly green, and because of that, it's not very detailed looking just because of the way that the color is. It does have the Autobot logo, and once again, the Cybertronian on the side, so it's still really nice, I guess, for what it does. The weapon, once again, can be stored on top, so now you got, once again, this very strange weapon on the top, but it's kind of weird also because it's kind of gets in the way of view. However, because of a secondary peg, you can peg this onto the back, which does kind of, so you can see, gives it a little bit of elevation, so it's not going to do very well there. So I guess the best bet would be, even though it's going to look really weird, is that, from what I could tell, it looks like you can't plug this in. Okay, I guess not. So that's pretty much your only option to storing the weapon in this mode, and it's not the best. Anyways, we'll now move on to both the helicopters. Now we're going to look at both the helicopters together, since they're the same mold overall, so I decided to just put them into one part. But anyways, we'll now take a look at Skyburst and Stormclash. Now, one of the big things about the Hasbro poll that was held last year for this character was that the vehicles were kind of one of the big points in deciding what would be the buildup of Victorion. Now, for a lot of people, including myself, in order to make it a lot more symmetrical, we decided to go with 2 cars, 2 helicopters, or flying vehicles in general, if I remember correctly, and then whatever the mold would be for the main body. So this is actually pretty nice. While the molds are obviously the same and just single toys alone, they're not going to do a whole lot different. Still really nice to see a lot more symmetry in just the design overall for the character. Anyways, we'll take a look at Skyburst first. Skyburst is pretty interesting, actually. I really like the head sculpt on Skyburst, since it just kind of looks like a female aerobot head. I don't know, I really just like the design of the head in general. Articulation-wise, Shoulders are on ball joints, and it can move pretty far there. Swivels in the elbows. Bends there with the ratchet, and it's very tight. As you can see, it's so tight that it's kind of moving the plastic around, which is kind of scary. Head is on a ball joint, which can look up really high compared to the rest of the characters, so that's nice. Waist articulation, but it's a bit finicky because you kind of need to turn it in a way in order to put it back in place. As you can see, it already started to kind of not allow me to turn it, but the articulation point is there. Let's move it around all the way the opposite way, since we'll probably go in that way. There we go. We have ball joints in the hips, swivels in the thighs, a single knee joint, but it did get dislodged there, so there we go. Single knee joint, which is just about 90 degrees, and feet can pivot again due to transformation. The same thing can be said with Stormclash over here. Her head is a very kind of slingshot kind of design because of the visor. Same points of articulation overall. Just going to quickly over it. It can turn. This one goes in the opposite way. Ironically, I have to turn it the opposite way in order to set it into place. So we got our hips, swivels, knees, and feet can pivot. So that's pretty much it for their articulation points. What's cool is that because they are the symmetrical designs, both of them have the same exact sword. So you can kind of put them in either hand, but it's really nice to kind of put them in the opposite hands. So not only will it be less confusing between the two, it's just really nice that swords really look really good actually in their hands, even if they're just a little tad bit big. Anyways, we'll now move on to the transformation into their helicopter modes. Now we have Skyburst and Stormclash in their vehicle modes. Now, what's actually a major difference in their vehicle modes is that, unlike Vortex and Alpha Bravo, they actually do not have any molded missile pods on the sides, and instead these tiny little wings. So that's actually one of the main differences between the molds. Other than that, the vehicle modes are pretty much the same, sans the color. Now, this is where it gets really weird. As you can see, the colors are really all over the place. Unlike the other characters, which have a lot more uniform colors, for both the helicopters, the colors are literally all over the place. It's supposed to represent kind of like the rust and so on, since they're actually from the planet of Junk, if I remember correctly. So it's understandable why it's got all this mismatched colors. The Autobot logos are on both sides of the fins in the back, and once again, it does maintain the Cybertronian symbols on the sides. Same thing with Stormclash. Actually, no. Stormclash does not actually have it in the same locations. As you can see, there's nothing there. So they might have actually moved it on her. Okay, so it's actually on the opposite side here. So that's really cool, actually. The weapons can be stored on the side as normal. You kind of need to fiddle around with it in order to attach it. As you can see, it is a bit strange where you attach it. Even if you attach it at the bottom, it's just going to have a sideways blade. So it's kind of a weird idea of storing the weapon this time around. So it's the same pretty much on both of them. So that pretty much covers their vehicle modes. Now we're going to take a look at the Legends figure of the set. And here we have poor little Rust Dust, which unfortunately is using the Legends class groove mold, which I absolutely despise due to the way that the stature of the small joints makes it very flimsy and parts just fly off all over it. It's not as bad on Rust Dust, but it still maintains the same problems that I see with the groove mold. The only difference is that it seems to fit in the chest a lot better in combined mode than I ever had to deal with the standard Legends groove. Anyways, articulation is the same, which we're going to see all around. It does have a brand new head if it can focus. There we go. This one's a little less feminine compared to the others. It kind of just looks like a police chief kind of design. The head is static. You're not going to see any articulation there. Shoulders are on ball joints, but it can move just about that much. Things do get in the way that it's designed. And once again, as you can see, the elbows are really loose on mine, but they do turn. No waist articulation, but they have outward hips, which go really far. Swivels in the thighs, bends at the knees, and feet can pivot. So that's pretty much it for articulation. But other than that, that's pretty much all you're going to get. We'll now look at her vehicle mode. And here we have Dust Up in her vehicle mode. As you can see, it's still that very small motorcycle design that Groove was. And other than that, there isn't a whole lot to say about the figure that I've already said about Groove. It does have this really nice looking Autobot insignia right here, and a bunch of Cybertronian parts, and it looks like they actually designed a cracked windshield, which is actually a really nice design touch, actually, with the design alone. Other than that, there isn't a whole lot different you're going to get with Dust Up. Anyways, we'll now take a look at Pyra Magna, the leader of Victorion. And now we take a look at Pyra Magna. Now, I actually forgot to mention previously on this point that Victorion is consisted of the team known as the Rust Renegades, which is a really interesting name, actually. And I think they work really nicely. The toy itself is utilizing the hotspot mold, so there isn't a whole lot you're going to get once again in design, except for the head, which is retool, which we'll get to in a minute. It has a really nice feminine head design, and they work really nicely here. And just looking at this figure in these colors, I can't stop looking at Fire Convoy or the original Robots in Disguise Optimus Prime. Just because of the red design alone, it looks very reminiscent of that design. Now, unfortunately, that does not mean there's going to be one announced or anything, which is a shame, since it would have been really nice to actually see Fire Convoy in these designs. So, anyways, we'll take a look at the figure itself. Articulation, you're going to see the same you've seen with both Bruticus, sorry, not Bruticus, seen with Onslaught and Hotspot. Ratchets in the shoulders, can bend outwards in the arms, swivels in the elbows, ratchets in the elbows, head on a ball joint, which can swivel all the way around, and look up and down just a tad bit. Sorry, it's not in frame. No waist articulation, but our hip movements on ratchets can also bend forward. Swivels in the thighs. Bends at the knees, technically double jointed due to the way that the design is, and feet can pivot a bit, but that's not really a pivot point. She does include this really interesting looking crossbow weapon. It can possibly go as maybe some kind of like a crossbow if you kind of pull it out of her hand and kind of plug it in. So you can kind of make it so that she has a crossbow instead if you didn't want a axe, though it doesn't really fit very well in her hand. So if you could probably make it a crossbow, but that's pretty much it for this mode. Anyways, we'll now take a look at Pyra Magna's vehicle mode. And here we have Pyra Magna in her vehicle mode. Now this is where the design of Fire Convoy really shines, just by the way that the design of the fire truck / rescue vehicle that she's based on, because it is still utilizing the hotspot mold, it looks really resembles the look of Fire Convoy. So it would have still been nice to maybe see that design in this mode, but it's understandable why they didn't release it. Anyways, in this mode, she does maintain the articulated crane to turn 360 and bend up a bit, and you can bend this piece due to transformation. Now the main difference, as I mentioned earlier, is that, as you can see, the head of Victorion is designed here, but this one cannot collapse. Unlike the one for Defensor, this can collapse to become kind of like a closed design, so that's pretty much all you can do with the head there. This weapon can be stored on the side as normal. You can kind of give her a crossbow on the side, but as you can see, once again, it does hinder the placement on the ground. It makes a lot more sense, I guess, to plug it on the side here, or maybe up here, since there's actually a couple places you can actually plug it in. So now you got this weird axe on the side of the ladder there, so it's just kind of a weird looking design. But anyways, we'll now actually take a look at all the components of Victorion in their vehicle modes together. And here we have the entire team of the Rust Renegades in their vehicle modes. Overall, it's still a really nice set to actually get a hold of. They have some pretty cool molds outside of the Groove mold, which I still hate. And they work really nicely, and I think they work together just in display as a team pretty good, even in the vehicle modes. Anyways, because this is a combiner, we'll now be taking a look at them combined together into Victorion. Here we have Victorion fully combined. Now, what's pretty cool to see is that Victorion actually has new parts in order to combine into her full combined form. And those are both the hands, which is in a completely new mold, and the feet, which actually now have ankle pivots, so that's really great. Another thing is that on the box, it shows that you're actually, well, obviously you can change it to any way you want, but the way that it's promoted, this hand, which is the denim mold, is supposed to be the arm on this side, but there was actually one major problem that I stumbled upon when trying to attach Dust Up as this arm here. And that's because the weapon, which are really cool when actually combined, actually turn into one large sword. Now, unfortunately, because of the way that the peg system works on Dust Up, just the nature of the denim mold, it forces the little adapter piece that's built inside to turn a bit and cause the arms to split up. So that's really annoying, and I really hated that. So I'm actually just using Jumpstream's design for the arm there. Anyways, to combine the weapons into one giant sword, what you're going to do is, this is actually going to be the main component, which you kind of just plug everything around it. What you're going to do is plug it like this. So you got both the pointed ends facing upward. For this, what you're going to do next is actually, this could be a bit tricky due to the way that the design is. Sometimes it's a bit confusing actually, and I think actually this is supposed to go in this way. So it looks like that. What you're going to do next is make sure that the pegs do not face in this direction. You're just going to plug them in the sides there, and it'll slide over the little piece here. And then you're going to do the same for the other side. Slide over. Okay. And then this will actually become the handle for the entire sword. And what's going to do is these two little areas where the pegs are going to peg on the side right here. As you can see, there are actually tiny little pegs there that are going to peg into the area here. So you slide this in, plug in a piece there, then you snap this piece up here, and there we have Victorion sword fully combined. And that's really great, actually, that Hasbro has designed a fully combinable weapon. And it just slides in the little peg here. Normally you would be able to hold it by the hand itself, but in reality you're actually just supposed to slide it into the peg. And there we have Victorion in her full combined glory. Now I actually have a few problems with this. One being the previously mentioned problem with the mold there. But as you can see, because of the new fins, it gets in the way of the actual legs, and that's really annoying. Articulation-wise, it's still really nice. Her head is on a swivel. And I think it's on a ball joint. Yeah, it's slightly on a ball joint, but due to the nature of the head, it is kind of stuck there. You're not going to move that much overall. The shoulders are on ratchets, and it can get disconnected just because of how the mold is. So you kind of need to play around with it. I'm going to take this off since Dust Up is about to fall off again. I'm going to turn it. So there you go with the ratchets. Outwards in the shoulders. And as you can see, it already split here, and that's what I don't like about the dead end mold. It can swivel around due to the way that the waist joint was on the design. Bend in the elbows. And what's cool is that the new hands actually are articulated as well. The articulation goes as follows. The thumb is a static piece. However, in two separate joints, the bottom 3 fingers can turn, and the top one is a single piece there. So that's pretty cool. If only she would stop falling apart. She does have ratchets in the hips. Can move outward just a bit, but not by a whole lot. Swivels in the knees. Bends in the knees. And because of the new sort of articulation, swivels from side to side and can turn a bit. But that's pretty much it for the combined mode. But just like the similar to the previous combiner wars, you're not going to get a whole lot of articulation, just put that alone, but it is nice to see the ankle pivots. So overall, I still recommend getting hold of Victorion. Obviously, she's not a character that previously existed, since she only exists as a promotion for the IDW comics and for Hasbro in general, but I highly recommend picking this up, and especially since it's a lot easier to get a hold of, since all you need to do is just get it in one giant box set without actually needing to go around and finding the individual components. The set itself is worth $100, but because of the coupons that I used, well, the coupon that I used on Hasbro Toy Shop, which, if I remember correctly, is still valid, at least as of this recording, I highly recommend picking it up. Anyways, please comment, subscribe, and check out Hirotaku. Also, please check out the other channels down below, and I'll be back for more Transformers reviews, but for now, I'll be seeing you YouTube. Bye.